I want to thank all of you for submitting questions to this town hall meeting. Because we have limited time, we're only here for 15 minutes, I'm going to focus on the 3 questions, but I want to thank you all for sending in questions, and hopefully we'll get to them at future Facebook Live town halls. I just love the fact that we have modern day technology, and it gives me an opportunity to really talk directly to my constituents. In fact, the first question comes from Michael from Vance, Alabama, and his question is, will you work to increase the amount of federal funding to public schools, particularly poor schools? Well, Michael, yes, I will be working. I have been working and will continue to work on behalf of all the children of the 7th Congressional District, and especially those that are in vulnerable environments and communities. I happen to be the daughter of 2 public school teachers. My dad was a high school basketball coach, and my mother was a high school librarian in Selma. I come from a long line of educators, and I know that education truly is the great equalizer of people's existence. I know that I would not have gotten an opportunity to go to college and law school had, education not been an important part of my life. And the opportunity to level the playing field so that someone like myself from little Selma, Alabama can go to and compete with others across this nation is really important. First, let me just tell you about the most recent efforts. In the Labor and Education Labor Workforce Committee, we reauthorized the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which provides Title I funding for low-income and vulnerable students. It's a free and reduced lunch program, and I can tell you that 99% of the public schools in my district receive Title I federal funds. I think it's really important that when we're talking about public schools that we make sure that we have funding that is adequate so that public schools can have really good libraries. I know that one of the things that was really important for me and my public school was the fact that we had an amazing science lab as well as debate programs, and all of that requires funding. And in order for schools that don't receive those fundings to get those fundings, we have to make sure that that unaccountable charter schools are not impeding upon funds that would go to public schools. I also think it's really important that we make the case that calling schools failing schools is giving them a label that they don't deserve, especially when most of the time it's because of unequal funding. And so I know that I have supported legislation to increase Title I and Title II funding that would go into low-income neighborhoods and rural communities and really try to level the playing field when it comes to funding. I know that programs like Teach for America have come in to offer supplemental help to low-income schools. In fact, I was very proud of the fact that before I was a member of Congress, I was really instrumental in trying to make sure that the Teach for America came to the rural parts of Alabama, because I understood how important it was to offer one-on-one teaching and the supplemental necessity that a program like Teach for America. So do know that I will always fight on behalf of the children of the 7th Congressional District and the children of America, because I understand that our greatest asset are our people. And if we are to continue to be this wonderful country of excellence, then we need to make sure that we have a diverse workforce that is educated for the jobs of the future. So stay tuned on education. It's always a great topic and really important to me. The second question came from Bethany from McCullough, Alabama. Her question is, how can we make sure our health and justice systems protect the victims of sexual assault and bring perpetrators to justice? Bethany, this is a very important topic, sexual assault, and making sure that we take care of the victims of sexual assault, both mentally, making sure that their mental health, and that not only are the perpetrators brought to justice, but that we also take care of the victims in the process. I know that in my district, there was a really sad story in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where a woman was sexually assaulted, raped, and because she did not receive justice, she ultimately killed herself. And, I think that we in the federal government can do a better job of making sure that college towns, this happened to be in Tuscaloosa, that we make sure that in college towns that there are sexual assault nurse examiners. I know that DCH, the hospital in Tuscaloosa, didn't have that. I think it's important that we provide care and have in these hospitals these nurse practitioners who are trained to deal with sexual assaults. Let them be the first healthcare professional that the sexual assault victims see, instead of sometimes insensitive police officers or insensitive folks that are not sensitized to sexual assault and its many complexities. I think that the search for justice is something that is near and dear to my heart, because as a lawyer who, I see our criminal justice system is in very much need of reform. The fact that we have these sentencing laws that will give longer sentences for crack cocaine than for powder cocaine, and we all know that that's because of the injustices, the difference between sort of high-end drugs versus low-end drugs, and where those communities where those drugs are. So I think that it's really important that we not only seek justice for sexual assault victims, but we also really try to work towards having better education as to what sexual assault is. No one should get away with it, no matter how rich the family is, or every person should have an opportunity to really fully explain themselves and have an opportunity to have their day in court. I know that for me, reading the story about Megan was really sad, and I hope that schools, especially schools in college towns, that those hospitals start having these sexual assault nurse examiners. I think that would go a long way. I look forward to continuing to fight on behalf of justice in our criminal system, as well as making sure that we fight for justice in all its forms, from environmental to voting rights. In fact, our third question has to do with voting rights. It comes from Richard from Birmingham, Alabama, and Richard's question is, what can constituents do to help restore the Voting Rights Act of 1965? How can we raise awareness of its importance? Well, Richard, this is this is an issue that's also near and dear to my heart. You may know that I come from Selma, Alabama, and Selma is not just a part of this district, but it's a part of it is my hometown. And I grew up seeing the Edmund Pettus Bridge and knowing the importance of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And yes, you're exactly right that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is under assault. The Supreme Court in the Shelby decision in 2013 gutted Section 5. Section 5 was the provision that offered the coverage test for states and jurisdictions to be required to pre-clear any voter discrimination. And what the Supreme Court did in the Shelby decision was really issue a charge for Congress to come up with a modern-day formula. I'm very proud of the fact that the modern-day formula that this Congress has before it is my bill, the Voting Rights Advancement Act. And the Voting Rights Advancement Act doesn't penalize states for voter discrimination that occurred 50 or 60 years ago. My coverage formula is a modern-day formula that would look at 25 years going forward. So from 1992 going forward, if a jurisdiction or a state has had 15 or more violations of voter discrimination, then that state would have to be required to pre-clear any changes in voting laws. And believe it or not, 13 states have had those kinds of violations in the last 25 years. Those states are as varied as those in the Deep South, like Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina, and North Carolina, but also states out west like Arizona and California, as well as New York and Florida. So 13 states have had that. What can you do as a citizen? I think that it's really important that we bring awareness to the need. There are modern day barriers to voting. Yes, it's true that you don't have to count how many marbles are in a jar anymore or recite all 67 counties that exist in the state of Alabama in order to be able to register to vote. But there are modern day barriers. These photo ID laws are a modern day barrier for so many people who don't have a photo ID. Believe it or not, in my state of Alabama, over 200,000 people don't have a photo ID. Not everybody drives, not everybody travels, not everybody's a student. And in my state, I thought it was particularly sad that the state of Alabama would close down 31 DMV offices, and all of us know that the most popular form of photo ID are driver's license. So I think that educating yourself and educating those around you of the importance of giving everyone access to the ballot box and not putting up barriers. And those barriers can be as simple as a photo ID or as pernicious as changing polling locations and not giving everyone advance notice of that. There are lots of ways that we have modern day barriers to voting, and I think it's important that we be an educated electorate. I think all of us know that it's important that we also make sure that we are doing all we can to encourage our neighbors and all those that are around to be sensitized to the issue of barriers to voting and access to voting. I also would love for you as my constituent, Richard, to get more information about my bill, the Voting Rights Advancement Act, and you can do so by calling one of my 4 offices that are in Alabama or my DC office. I really hope that through educating each other about the importance of everyone, every American who's over the age of 18, having the opportunity to vote, irrespective of what their political party is or where they come from. I know personally for me, my father was a victim of a stroke, and he wasn't able to drive. It was very fortunate that we were able to provide him with the opportunity to get a photo ID, but that process in and of itself took over 5 hours. Why? Because when you're disabled and you are wheelchair dependent, you are dependent upon having transportation to the courthouse to get that photo ID. We were blessed in order to have one of those vans. We saved up for many years so that my dad had one of those vans that sort of kneel down, and so he was able to get to the courthouse. But the courthouse had been grandfathered into the Americans Disabilities Act, and so because of that, it didn't have to have a ramp, and so we had to wait till someone could help us get my dad's wheelchair up those 7 steps in order to get into the courthouse. And lo and behold, it turns out that the voter registration and voter office was on the 2nd floor, and there was only one elevator, and the elevator was broken. I tell you that story to say that, this is a personal story for me, and this is a personal quest for me, because I think that we are not sensitized as a nation to the barriers that exist today for seniors, for the disabled, for the elderly, for the young, to be able to have access to a ballot box. So thank you all for participating in today's Facebook Live Town Hall. It's been really great. It's the first one that I've ever done. It's really kind of fun. I hope that you will continue to give us questions and participate in our next Facebook Live. So thanks again for giving me this opportunity. I'm Congresswoman Terri Sewell. I represent Alabama's 7th Congressional District, and this has been fun. Peace out.